Hello and welcome. Glad you're here. This is Bob Berry, and I am the founder of the Human Computer Mastermind Academy and the itstheusers.com website and learning system, and the creator of the e-workshop that you're about to view on human computer interactions. So, a little bit about where this comes from and why I do this. Over the last couple of decades, with thousands of users and hundreds of clients all over the world, I have developed a new art and science of how to reveal and optimize human-computer interactions. And this is all about how your audience, your customers, your users interact with you and your online ventures. And it's about how to have a big impact on everything that you do online and all your business operations and any endeavors that you happen to pursue and the interactive online components of those. So the workshop that you're about to see is organized into what I call the Human-Computer Interactions Framework. And so how this impacts your success, your business, and you will be organized into four major realms. And because we're talking about human-computer interactions, that's the basic organization of the framework. So we're going to start with human dynamics. And who are all these users and all these real people in the world, and how you might interact with them through various interfaces and interactive media. Second of all is the computer, and that can include a lot of things: websites, social media, apps, intranets, any interface that you're providing them that's going to communicate who you are and what you offer the world and what sorts of services or value you might provide that audience. Third are the interactions between those humans and those computers, and this is a very rapidly advancing science, and there's a lot of dramatic insights in this realm that will help you and your audience be more successful with whatever that you're trying to accomplish. And finally, there's a pretty rich collection of research and methods of inquiry that will help you uncover all of this, because of course the big challenge is that how humans interact with your online systems is all hidden. And a key message and a key part of this workshop and all that we do with the Academy is to help you make all of this visible. So with this system and this framework, I have actively invented, innovated, and experimented with a number of new approaches. And I also actively track technology, industry, and professional developments, as well as new developments in human behavioral science. And because this is all about humans, that behavioral science is very important. So this workshop is an overview of various traditional as well as new practices, principles, methods, and approaches that are going to help you and your teams and your goals and endeavors be more successful online. So we're going to start with a framework. So I mentioned that this human-computer interactions framework is a pretty important part of what we're going to cover here in this workshop and ultimately in the Human-Computer Mastermind Academy. And again, as I mentioned, we're going to talk about humans, computers, and interactions. So let me give you an overview, and we'll use this diagram repeatedly as we go through this particular section of the workshop and into some of the more advanced topics as well. So starting with people, of course, you're trying to reach and influence people. So this human realm of HCI, of human-computer interactions, we start with what I call the user narrative. So in all that you offer and present to your users, that information, those interfaces, must take those users into account and integrate smoothly with them as they live their own lives, moment to moment, day to day. This is all about the story, their narrative of who they are, what they want and need, and how they're going to go after finding it and using it. This narrative is really a big picture view of real people in the real world doing real things, independent of you and what your concerns are. So being objective about those humans and their narrative is really important. The next part of the human part of this HCI workshop is what I call the doer. And the color you see, this red color, indicates that the doer, as well as some of the other material, is going to be provided in a bonus section, and I'll direct you to that bonus material after we've covered the core topics here. Now, this doer is a new user modeling and analysis approach that I've developed that takes this concept and practice of the narrative down to the specifics of exactly when, where, how, and why these humans, these users, would ever interact with you. It's about how the buyer buys, or how the learner learns, or how the shopper shops, and countless more how the doers do whatever it is that they do, and where you fit in all of that doing. So the narrative is the larger context and story of a user's life. The doer then distills all of that down to the precise moment that they're interested or motivated to reach for whatever it is you might be offering, and all the steps that they might go through to find that and engage it. And we'll go into quite a bit of detail on both the narrative and the doer. Then in the computer realm, to these humans, we introduce these interactive panels of glass, whether they're mobile phones or tablets or PCs or some hybrid device. We are now onto the computer realm in HCI. And in this computer realm, I will cover, first of all, usable. Now, this is the traditional long-standing science of ease of use and usability. It's the most fundamental principle and set of disciplines and practices that I'll cover here in the workshop. And I'll show you a number of specific ways to ensure that what you're providing, these interfaces in this computer realm, are usable and people can make sense out of them and do productive things with them. The second principle and set of practices I'll cover is around seamless. Now, this is a process that demands that all of your systems allow users easy movement across any program or technology or service that you offer them. So that could include web, email, apps, phone systems, your sales team, your order tracking, everything that a user might actually touch. Any friction or barriers between those different realms means that users get lost, and that can equate to lost business or lost sales for you. It can equate to higher costs, and ultimately seems to create greater hassle for everyone. And believe me, in my experience, it's one of the most common causes of lost opportunity online, when real users get lost in those seams. The third realm that we'll cover in the bonus section is functional integrity. And this is the second of the 4 parts of the bonus, and it simply says that your programs work. Whatever interface or digital interactive systems you provide your audience, you have to ensure that they don't break or fail or crash. This is another old realm. It's one of the oldest in making sure that HCI works for your audience. But there are some new, dramatic, important elements in this because of the explosion of the number and types of devices in the world and all those interactive panels of glass, and many more coming in the future. This has really risen to the forefront to make sure that everyone can use all the devices that might be out there in the world, and that all of your systems work with those devices. Moving on to the interaction realm now, and putting humans and computers together and people actually working with their interactive panels of glass. In this section and in this particular set of principles, I'll cover useful. Now, this is all about relevance. It's about meaning and providing what the user cares about. So a system can be easy to use, it can be functionally perfect, and it can be very seamless. But if it's meaningless, if it doesn't offer things of interest and value to users, and if it doesn't provide useful tools, functions, and features that help the user make sense of and navigate it, then users won't care, they won't engage. All of those other things can be perfect, but if it's not relevant and useful, then it's not going to be successful for you or your audience. And Amazon is an example that I'll cover in the workshop. They're a great case study on how to really do this well, and we'll explore that further. The second realm, which is in the bonus, in this interactions phase or section of the workshop, is what I call the dance. Now, this is a very new realm, and it's evolving rapidly, and it really refers to the reality of how interfaces and what we do with them is becoming more advanced, more intuitive, and more fun for users. We are all now exhibiting emotional reactions to all our devices and our interactive panels of glass. And this is both an opportunity if done well and a liability if done poorly. So, those are the 3 realms of human, computer, and how humans and computers interact. But there's more, because we recognize that all of those interactions between people, users, and their little panels of glass are essentially invisible. This is all happening 24/7 right now for you and everyone else, but we can't see it. And so a big part of really making all of this work for your audience and for you is we have to make it visible. And so there's a variety of methods for doing that. And we'll cover these in some detail as I go through this particular section of the workshop. This includes structuring and measuring task completion by users. It includes gathering data about user behaviors on a small scale or on a massive scale. And then it includes knowing how to analyze all that data and the results. So there are many excellent tools out there now, and from the very simple to the very complex, and this is a realm that will help you really understand a lot about what users are doing and how they're interacting with your operations and whatever you're putting online. The other section that we'll cover here in the workshop is, and this is all in the bonus, and these are qualitative methods of inquiry. And these are just as important as the quantitative, as the data parts. And these include some very effective face-to-face methods that are intuitive, dynamic, adaptive, and at most only semi-scripted. These are all about ways of interacting with real people. I've done considerable research and development with these methods of interviewing users and developing some pretty significant rapport with them. And I'll show you in the bonus section how all of that's done, because ultimately those people, those real humans, those users are in control of your success or your failure online. So knowing how to interact with them and really understanding what is their narrative, how do they do what they do, how do they use their devices, what are all the interactions that they experience, it requires those qualitative methods of asking, conducting effective dialogue, doing interviews. That's a really critical part, and I'll cover that in some detail. So be aware that assessing your online programs for anything here in this framework and making any relevant necessary improvements based on what you discover can have a really profound effect on your online results and your business or whatever online goals or endeavors you're pursuing. So the workshop is going to cover all of these principles in some depth. And later in the Human Computer Mastermind Academy, I'll show you how to not only pursue and go after all of these, I'll show you how to include your team, how to repeat the process for any of your online programs, and ultimately how to transform your results with the people that you're trying to reach and influence and engage in the world. The whole point of all this is that I can't give you the answers for your systems, your users, your business, your products. That's the purpose of this framework that you see here, is to find your own answers. This is a methodology for you to go out in the world and really interact with your audience and understand how well you influence them and what you need to do to make all of that work better, so that they can reach their goals, which means you will then reach yours. Now, as we go through this, I'm going to use a variety of case studies and examples to illustrate key points and provide specifics about how a lot of this is done. And here's the first one. So this is a very simple little case study, a very simple little example that really carries throughout the entire workshop and ultimately into the Mastermind Academy as well. If you need an immediate, vivid example of what I mean by HCI, by what I mean by human-computer interactions, look no further than this workshop and the screen in front of you, because this workshop obviously is all about HCI. It was created using HCI. It's built on HCI. You found it through whatever means using HCI. And right now, as you're using it, you are interacting with the computer or some device as a human being and going through all of the material and everything that I'm presenting here. So if you need a good example of what is HCI, look no further than the workshop you're experiencing right now. Throughout this workshop and the entire Human Computer Mastermind Academy, I will refer to what I call the 5 core truths of HCI. And I base all my materials and methods on these 5 core truths. And I've mentioned these in the introduction video, and they're important enough to review here again. First, our success in our endeavors in the world, your success in your endeavors, has moved to and is now largely dependent on what you're able to accomplish online. You now operate in a vastly interconnected world, and we're never going back. This is the nature of how businesses and many different endeavors in the world interact with their audience and their customers. 2, in that online world, real humans make all the decisions. They are the driver of everything that happens. The interactions between humans and their little panels of glass determine your success or failure. They are in control. 3. All of this is invisible. When you fall short of your goals, when you miss the mark with your online programs, you can't see what's happening. You don't know how or why you're off track. You can't see the source of those problems and the agony that goes with them because all that human behavior is invisible. 4. You experience, in many cases to a large extent, some mix of agony and anticipation, disappointment, desire about all of your online results. You invest a lot of time, effort, money, and honestly your own personal credibility in all of these online efforts. But for reasons you can't often explain, they don't meet expectations. They fall short, they miss the goal, sometimes by a lot, and that's agony. And that's way too common in the world today with professionals and companies that are trying to do things online. 5. For the last 20 years of doing research in depth with major clients, I know that the art and science of human-computer interactions is the answer to relieve this agony. And I can show you how. The online industry, to a large extent, has omitted a lot of these approaches. So I suspect a lot of this material is going to be new for you. In fact, if you go out and visit the top online forums for professionals in this field, and these are places for webmasters, online marketers, bloggers, web designers and developers, social media developers, app designers. If you go look at those sites, those communities, there's a tremendous number of categories and topics that can help you with virtually any online challenge. However, and amazingly, there are no categories for HCI. Yet every one of those disciplines, every one of those programs that somebody might offer, everything that a professional might create or build or put online is meaningless without real people, actual users attempting to do something useful with it. That's why HCI is at the center of everything that happens. So before we start into all this great HCI material that I have for you, I want to be clear with you about the role of this study of HCI in the complete online realm, in the big picture of what you might do with all of your customers, users, and your audiences online. So you have a vast number of options to choose from when crafting your online programs and what you're going to put behind those panels of glass. In this slide here is a partial list of the many online disciplines, programs, methods, approaches, as well as a list of common research methods that you might use to understand all of those things. This study of HCI that I'm sharing with you replaces none of these. Without all of these programs and platforms and options, there simply would be no humans interacting with computing devices. But once these systems are in place, for any one of them to exist and to function, human-computer interactions must occur. The role of the study of HCI is to reveal, to test, to fix, to validate, to optimize, and to maximize any of these. My message to you is that you should keep doing, or maybe start doing, whichever of these are working for you. But be sure they're working for you by applying the HCI methods and principles that I'm going to show you here. There are a lot of gurus and consultants and vendors of all types who would try and sell you their products, their software, their ideas, and whatever foolproof systems they have to offer you. And those things may work, but the effectiveness of every single one of those solutions will ultimately, eventually, finally be decided by the users. You don't get to decide, nor does the guru or the vendor. The users decide. As I emphasize repeatedly, what your users do or don't do with any of these is hidden and invisible unless you actively put processes in place to make them visible, according to all the methods and practices and principles that I'm going to be sharing with you here in the workshop and beyond. Please don't be surprised at some of the claims I'm going to make about the power and effectiveness of studying and mastering this whole realm of HCI, because it is at the center of everything. Users determine all the things that are going to happen for you online. So I'm going to make claims like the following. I'm going to say, this is the only way to discover what's really happening with users. And that's true. I'll say no other method is more comprehensive. All of those methods and systems and programs that I just showed you, every single one of them can be evaluated, improved, validated using HCI. And I'll claim that what you discover is entirely unique, which is true. HCI and the study of HCI and these methods will reveal things that you cannot find any other way. This is all required for any online endeavor. If humans and real users are the driver, they're the controller of everything that happens for you online, it must be a requirement. You must go look at it. And again, because it's central to everything that happens, it is critical to your success and your users' success. And those are tied together. If your users don't succeed, you won't succeed. I'll also make claims about ROI, and I'll give you some examples of return on investment. Whatever you spend, whatever time you invest, whatever effort you put into the study of HCI can reap huge returns. And we'll go into some very specific examples and case studies of how that works. I'm going to make claims like, whoever you are and whatever you do professionally, you haven't mastered your art until you master this. And this is really a business fundamental, because understanding who your audience is, who your market is, who your customers are, what they need, and then how to interact with them, independent of HCI, is a fundamental. But we're going to put it into some very specific, actionable, practical terms that you can apply in your business and your endeavors. So I don't make these claims because I think HCI is better than all of your other online skills, capabilities, approaches, whatever you're doing, or that HCI should replace any of them. Absolutely not. My claim is simply this: all of those other efforts, investments, methods, tools, solutions have very specific roles and benefits, and those are important. And you should continue to develop and apply them if they're working for you, or start using them if they're going to help you. But the only way to know if they're working is by making visible how real people use and interact with them, period. That's the core of what I'm trying to teach here.